Hello, welcome to our channel MindFuel. Hope that you like previous parts of Hitler's series. In case you did not watch previous parts, go and watch them to understand the whole story of Hitler. The attack against the USSR was launched on June 22, 1941. The German army advanced swiftly into the Soviet Union, corralling almost 3 million Russian prisoners, but it failed to destroy its Russian opponent. Hitler became overbearing in his relations with his generals. He disagreed with them about the object of the main attack, and he wasted time and strength by failing to concentrate on a single objective. In December 1941, a few miles before Moscow, a Russian counteroffensive finally made it clear that Hitler's hopes of a single campaign could not be realized. On December 7, the next day, the Japanese attacked us. Forces at Pearl Harbor. Hitler's alliance with Japan forced him to declare war on the United States. From this moment on, his entire strategy changed. He hoped and tried, like his idol Frederick I the Great, to break what he deemed was the unnatural coalition of his opponents by forcing one or the other of them to make peace. In the end, the unnatural coalition between Stalin and Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt did break up, but too late for Hitler. He also ordered the reorganization of the German economy on a full wartime basis. Meanwhile, Himmler prepared the ground for a new order in Europe. From 1933 to 1939, and in some instances even during the first years of the war, Hitler's purpose was to expel the Jews from the Greater German Reich. In 1941, this policy changed from expulsion to extermination. The concentration camps created under the Nazi regime were thereby expanded to include extermination camps such as Auschwitz and mobile extermination squads, the Einsatzgruppen. Although Catholics, Poles, homosexuals, Roma, Gypsies, and the handicapped were targeted for persecution, if not outright extermination, Jews of Germany, Poland, and the Soviet Union were by far the most numerous among the victims. In German-occupied Europe, some 6 million Jews were killed during the war. The sufferings of other peoples were only less when measured in their numbers killed. At the end of 1942, defeat at El Alamein and at Stalingrad and the American landing in French North Africa brought the turning point in the war, and Hitler's character and way of life began to change. Directing operations from his headquarters in the east, he refused to visit bombed cities or to allow some withdrawals, and he became increasingly dependent on his physician, Theodor Morell, and on the large amounts and varieties of medicines he ingested. Yet Hitler had not lost the power to react vigorously in the face of misfortune. After the arrest of Mussolini in July 1943 and the Italian armistice, he not only directed the occupation of all important positions held by the Italian army, but also ordered the rescue of Mussolini with the intention that he should head a new fascist government. On the Eastern Front, however, there was less and less possibility of holding up the advance. Relations with his army commanders grew strained, the more so with the growing importance given to the SS Schutzstaffel division. Meanwhile, the general failure of the U-boat campaign and the bombing of Germany made chances of German victory very unlikely. Desperate officers and anti-Nazi civilians became ready to remove Hitler and negotiate a peace. Several attempts on Hitler's life were planned in 1943-44. The most nearly successful was made on July 20, 1944, when Colonel Claus von Stauffenberg exploded a bomb at a conference being held at Hitler's headquarters in East Prussia. But Hitler escaped with superficial injuries, and with few exceptions, those implicated in the plot were executed. The reduction of the army's independence was now made complete. National Socialist political officers were appointed to all military headquarters. Hereafter, Hitler was increasingly ill, but he did not relax or lose control, and he continued to exercise an almost hypnotic power over his close subordinates, none of whom wielded any independent authority. The Allied invasion of Normandy, June 6, 1944, marked the beginning of the end. Within a few months, 8 European capitals, Rome, Paris, Brussels, Bucharest, Sofia, Athens, Belgrade, Helsinki, were liberated by the Allies or surrendered to them. In December 1944, Hitler moved his headquarters to the west an offensive in the Ardennes aimed at splitting the American and the British armies. When this failed, his hopes for victory became ever more visionary, based on the use of new weapons. German rockets had been fired on London since June 1944 or on the breakup of the Allied powers. After January 1945, Hitler never left the Chancellery in Berlin or its bunker, abandoning a plan to lead a final resistance in the south as the Soviet forces closed in on Berlin. In a state of extreme nervous exhaustion, he at last accepted the inevitability of defeat, and thereupon prepared to take his own life, leaving to its fate the country over which he had taken absolute command. Before this, two further acts remained. At midnight on April 28, 29, he married Eva Braun. Immediately afterward, he dictated his political testament justifying his career and appointing Admiral Karl Donitz as head of the state and Joseph Goebbels as chancellor. On April 30, he said farewell to Goebbels and the few others remaining, then retired to his suite and shot himself. His wife took poison. In accordance with his instructions, their bodies were burned. Hitler's success was due to the susceptibility of post-war Germany to his unique talents as a national leader. His rise to power was not inevitable. Yet there was no one who equaled his ability to exploit and shape events to his own ends. The power that he wielded was unprecedented, both in its scope and in the technical resources at its command. His ideas and purposes were accepted in whole or in part by millions of people, especially in Germany, but also elsewhere. By the time he was defeated, he had destroyed most of what was left of old Europe, while the German people had to face what they would later call Year Zero, 1945. Thanks for watching this video. Hope you liked the whole series of Hitler. In case you are new to the channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon.